Hi, in this lesson we're going to be creating this animation sequence using the deformers we've learned in our previous class. So let's dive right into it. Alright, so the first thing I want to create is a plane. To create a plane, I simply go to this icon right here. I left click this and I drop my plane in the scene by clicking on the plane right here. I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to increase the segment of the plane to 60 by 60. And I'm going to increase the width and height segment as well to 2000 by 2000. Now the next thing I want to do is to create a deformer. Now the deformer we're going to be using in this particular lesson is the displacer, as well as other deformers as well, but we're starting with the displacer. So the first thing I want to do is to click on my displacer and drag it directly under my plane, so I'm making it a child of the plane. If we click play right now, there's really nothing happening in the scene. That's because we need to load up a map for the displacer so it begins to displace this plane. Now for us to do that, you simply go to the shading tab and click on this option here that says shader, and then you load in your noise map, right? So by loading in your noise map, you can see there are some deformations happening on the plane right now. So if I hit play, nothing happens really, there's no animation. And that is because you need to go into your noise right here, and then you need to give it an animation speed of say 1. And if we hit play now, we can see there's a slight animation going on. Now for what we're trying to achieve, we simply want to increase this global scale to about 400, right? So experiment with this value and let's see what works. Alright, so 400 is fine, but I think I want to make that even bigger. See, I only have large waves, so I'm going to make it 700, and let's see how that is looking right now. Alright, so that's not looking bad. Alright, so that's very okay. So the next thing I want to do is to make the plane even bigger, right? So I'm going to make the plane 4000 by 4000. Alright, so there we have it. Now I'm going to increase my segment and take it all the way to 100 by 100. Now you can always leave your segment at 60, and when you're done with the entire animation, you could drop it into a subdivision surface, right? So that is going to help your machine. If your machine is not too strong, you can always optimize this setting. So we leave it to 60 in the width and 60 in the height, so that way you don't bog down your machine. So the next thing I want to create is to go back again and click on my sphere right now. So I'm going to move my sphere up a bit, and the next thing I want to do is to increase my segments. So I'm going to turn my segment to about 50 until we're looking. Alright, so that's looking really good, and I want to change my type here to icosahedron. Now the reason why I'm changing my type to icosahedron is because of the way the segments here are drawn, right? So it allows it for better deformations. Now if I'm using this standard, if I begin to deform this object, we get some really weird deformations around this point where all these edges converge, right? So which is why we want to select the icosa, right? So icosa basically makes it easier to deform this thing properly. Now the next thing I want to do is to I want to create another deformer, and the deformer I want to use currently is the jiggle deformer. So I'm going to drag this jiggle deformer and make it a child of the sphere object. If I play now, we are not seeing any animation, so we are basically just seeing animation on the plane we added the displacer on. Now to get that animation going on this sphere, what we need to do is we need to load a force directly into this jiggle deformer forces tab. Now to do that, I simply will go to my simulate right here, and I'll go all the way down to forces, and I'm going to select the turbulence. Now with the turbulence selected, I'm going to go to my jiggle and see if it was applied here. So Cinema 4D did not drop that turbulence right here, so we can always just drop it manually by just left clicking and dragging it directly here. So now we have our turbulent force in the top, in the forces section of this jiggle deformer. Right now if I hit play, let's see what's happening. There's a slight animation going on, but it's not so visible, so we want to make it really prominent by going to the turbulence, and after which we want to increase this strength to about say 60. I can start with 50 and work my way up. Then I'm going to make the scale about 100, and let's see what we get. So I'm going to go back and then hit play. Right, so that's happening right now. It's looking really good. And I want to turn up my timeline a bit, so I'm going to make it about 300. Alright, so now we have this going in our scene. So currently we've been able to successfully create this animation on this sphere. Now the next thing I want us to do is to duplicate this sphere. So I'm going to just hold down Control, and then I'm going to left click and drag. So now we have a second sphere, which I'm going to move out this way. So what I want to do is want to have multiple sphere going around. The next thing I want to do is to check my jiggle deformer right here, and I want to disable this turbulence right here for now. And I also want to disable this. I want to take out this jiggle right here. Now the next thing I want to do is to move this way a little, and I want to increase the radius a whole lot. So I'm going to make it about, say, 190, and basically I'm just going to make random sphere and just hold. Now I'm holding down Control and left clicking and drag on a particular axis, so I get a duplicate towards that axis, right? So I'm going to make this, say, 120. I think I'm going to make this a bit smaller, say about 70, and basically I'm just rearranging things, and so I'm going to move it this way and make it a little bigger right here. I can move this a bit to the back, and there we go. Yep. And so the next thing I want to do is to just create different jiggle deformers for this. So I'm going to delete this one, and I'm going to start in jiggle deformers. So I'm going to hold down Shift. Now if I hold down Shift and create an object, it's going to make that object a child. So that's exactly what's happening, right? So I'm going to do that for this also. I'm going to hold down Shift, left click here, and select the jiggle deformer, right? So it's going to make a child of the sphere, and I'm going to do the same thing right here. Now the next thing is I can decide to make this turbulence affect every single one of them, but I want to have more control over that. So basically I'm just trying to rearrange things right now, and I want to duplicate this by holding Control and dragging, and I want to open up this jiggle deformer, go to the forces section, and drop this second turbulence right there. So I'm just going to mess with the settings of the turbulence. I can turn it a bit down to about 40, and I can make the scale about, say, 70. So now we have two different turbulence, so they don't actually look the same, right? So I think I want to increase the scale, or maybe increase the strength to about 60. So basically all of this is just an artistic decision, so you could just begin to play with all of these settings. I could also go to this second jiggle deformer and just try and play with the stiffness. That's what I'm getting. Alright, so it's looking really good. I can come here and make this about 120. Yep, so I'm just going to create another duplicate, and I'm going to drop it in the forces section of this jiggle deformer, and now we have another separate one going on here. So I'm just going to make changes. I might increase this to a bit to about 150, and so we have a different animation going there. So for this last one, I'm also going to duplicate this turbulence force and move it up here a bit, so everything is a bit arranged. And I want to go to my jiggle deformer, and I want to drop in my turbulence as well, right? So now we have animation going on there, and I can as well just mess with the size of this. I can make this 160. Alright, so basically what we've done is that we've created a plane, we added a displacer on the plane, and then we added a shading, we added noise map in the shading right there. So when we added the animation speed of 1, this starts to animate real nice. And then we went on to create a sphere. We dragged in a jiggle deformer right in the sphere, and then we are driving animation through the jiggle deformer by applying a turbulence force. Alright, so I got my turbulence force from my simulate forces and turbulence right here, and I drag that in here, and so I'm using this turbulence, the force from this turbulence, to drive this sphere through this jiggle deformer, right? So basically that's what we have right now. And currently if you drag through your timeline, you get this really weird result going on. That's because this jiggle deformer needs to be cached, right? So to cache them, basically all you need to do is just go to the jiggle deformer, there you go to cache, and you can just click on calculate. What I like to do is to select all the jiggle deformers if I have more than one in the scene, and I can just calculate all of them together. So I can just click calculate, and basically Cinema 4D is going through the timeline and is calculating every single one of them. Alright, so it's done with the first one and moving to the second one, and we have about 4 currently in the scene. So this is the third one, and this is the last one going right here. So I think that's going to finish any moment from now, and yeah, we're done. So we can now scrub through a timeline without having any issues, right? Now if we were to use the regular standard sphere for this, we won't have this really nice deformation. We were going to have weird deformations going on. One thing we can do now is to drop these spheres into a subdivision surface, right, so that it's a lot more smooth when we render. To do that, I'm just going to click on this. I'm going to hold on Alt this time around because we want to make this sphere a child of this subdivision surface we're about to create. So I'm going to hold on Alt and left click on this. So now we have some really nice subdivision there. I'm going to repeat the same process. I'm going to come here, hold on Alt, I'm going to click this, hold on Alt, and I'm going to click this. All right. So one thing you can do to really enable good playback on your Cinema 4D viewport is to, when you apply subdivisions, is to go to your subdivision editor and just turn this way off, right? So you're not seeing it right here in the scene, but it's going to show up in the render. So that's what this is doing, subdivision render. And you can always turn this up also if your scene can handle it. Alright, so I would like to quickly touch up on something. And that is the autosave feature in Cinema 4D, right? So it's really important you turn that on so you don't lose any files. To do that, you simply go to your edit, you go to preference, which is Ctrl E, is written here as a shortcut, and you can click that. It will load up your preferences, and under your files you can click on your autosave. Currently is already checked here, so you want to check that, and you can set the duration of basically this is the interval, so you want to save every 5 minutes, or you can also turn it to 10 minutes or 30 minutes. You can also specify the amount of copies you want it to save, so maybe you can do 5 copies or 10. Anyone is fine. Alright, so I'm just going to close that. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to create my text, right? And basically I'm going to just first of all create a box, and I'm going to make each of those texts sit directly on this box, right? So basically I'm trying to create something that looks like a BBC style text. So each of these boxes is going to carry the text, right? So the way I'm going to do that is to just first of all I'm going to resize this. Alright, so I'm just going to dial in 160 by 160 by 160. Alright, so that's fine. And the next thing I want to write my text. I'm going to go to my Mo graph. I'm going to select my Mo text. Alright, so I want to write B right here. And I'm just going to move this B position this right here. Right, so what I want to do basically is to change the font first, and I'm going to give it some nice bevel edges right here. So I'm just going to look for a pretty decent font, and I'm going to change this to a Gotham font, so this works fine. And the next thing will be to go to my cap section, and I can load up a preset. Now if you're not using Cinema 4D R21, you won't have these options that allows you to load a preset, right? So basically you will still have a section that says cap section, but then there is a menu right here that you can select the fillet type. You can select the cap type, so there should be an option that says maybe fillet cap. So you want to check that fillet cap on, and just play with the settings for the fillet cap right there. But in this Cinema 4D version, you just want to load up a preset, right? So that makes it really easy. So for this, I'm just going to load up a quick preset. I'm just going to go with this. This works just fine. So now we have a cube and we have a text right here. One thing I want to do with the text is to go to the object, and I want to set this to middle. Then I'm going to reposition this right here. So I'm just going to select both of these and I'm going to group them, right? So the way you do that is to click on Alt G, right? Or you can as well just right click on any one of them and click on your Alt G to group object, right? So you want to select the first one, you want to hold Control, you want to select the second one, and you want to right click and go to Alt G. So when you click that, it's going to group the object and it's going to drop it into a null. Now what we want to do is to hold down Control and left click and duplicate this object 3 times right here. And I'm going to do this for the next one as well. So there we have it, and I'm going to come back to this second one here and change it from, okay, so I'm just going to leave that to B, and I'm going to change this other one to C. So there we have BBC C, and there we have it. So we have that BBC text going on. I'm just going to try and reposition this. Alright, awesome. So the next thing will be to try and set our camera view. So I'm just going to click here. Yeah, right here is fine. Move this back a bit. Right here. Alright, so I'm just going to click on my camera, and we have a camera right here. To set this as the camera view, I'm going to just click on this little checkbox here. So this is set as a camera view. Now I'm going to quickly right click, and under my rigging tag I'm going to add my protection, right? So basically your protection makes us lock this camera right here. So basically it's like we are locking this on the tripod so it doesn't move. You're unable to move the camera around. So the reason why we do that is you don't want to make the mistake of just clicking on something and moving it around, or just moving the entire camera view around, which is why we usually use this protection right here. So I'm going to quickly go away from the camera view and I can move this scene around again. Now the next thing I want to do is to find a way to scale this object in, just the way we scaled in our text from our previous lesson. Yeah, so the way we do that is by using a tool called fracture, and you find the fracture by going to the more graph and you scroll a bit down, and then you have the fracture object right here. Now if you click on the fracture, you want to load in all of this into the fracture. Now you're probably wondering why we are not using the cloner, or why is the fracture different from the Werner fracture. Now the Werner fracture basically is just going to fracture an object and you can perform operations on it. Now the cloner only clones an object. So take for instance, I group these two as a null and then I drop it as a cloner. The cloner is just going to clone this same object, right? So we don't have that flexibility of changing each of these because it's going to be the same object cloned in different ways, right? But with fracture you can load up your object directly and you can affect those objects using an effector. So that's the reason why we're using the fracture object. So right now we've loaded each of these null as an entity into the fracture. So the fracture currently is seeing this null, this group as one object, this as one object, this as one object. So the next thing I want to do is to click on my MoGraph, go to my effector. I'm going to click on my plane effector, and I'm going to go to my fall off in the plane effector, and I'm going to click on hold. I'm going to turn on my box field. Now a box field has been created down here, so I just want to move it up to about this point where the text is sitting. So immediately it touches the text, you can see what happened. The text jumped right up, and that's because in my plane effector the parameter is set to 100 centimeter on the Y, right? So as this box field touches this object immediately moves 100 centimeter in the Y direction. Now if you remember vividly from my explanation with about the field, so field basically is more like an activator, right? So it carries the parameters or the features of your effector and then is being activated within that space, right? So anywhere this field touches, the plane effector takes effect. So first thing I want to do is just make this really big so it captures all the objects. And then the next thing I want to do is to go to my plane effector and then turn this off. I'm going to change this back to 0 and I'm going to turn this off. Now we don't have any action going on that position parameter right there. So the next thing I want to do is to check the scale. I'm going to click on uniform scale and I'm going to set this to -1. Right, so we can see what's happening. They've all scaled down, but the C is still kind of visible. So what you want to do is to click on the box field and just make it a lot bigger and try and recenter it. Now currently, wherever the box field is, the object disappears. What we actually want is the inverse. So for me to do that, I'm going to go to my box field. Actually, I'm going to go to my planar and I'm going to go to my fall off. And what I want to do is to select this clamp here. I'm going to left click and hold it down and I want to click invert. So basically that's going to invert whatever action that is going on this box field right here. And I can go to my box field and start to move this, right? So all I need to do is just animate this in. So at about say frame 130, I'm going to create a keyframe right here for this box field and I'm going to hit my record button. So now we have an animation going on right there. First of all, I need to change this color thing happening. So the box field is creating this color right here, so it's writing this color on top of this box. We don't want that. And the way you turn that off is to go to your color remap and you want to change this to no remap. So we're going to take away that color happening right there. So the next thing now is to add a delay effector, because currently if you play this animation it just comes up, so there's really nothing interesting happening. I'm going to move this a bit here so it's not so fast. So there's really nothing much happening. So I'm going to click on my fracture object, just go to my MoGraph effector and I want to go to my delay effector. So I'm just going to go to my delay effector here. I want to go to my effector tab and I want to turn this way up. So if I hit play, so I'm just going to move my timeline here and see what happens. So there's this really nice blend happening. So the objects don't just come up abruptly anymore. So there's this really nice blend going on. You can as well change this to the spring if that's what you're going for. So I'm going to push this here and you have BBC. So that's looking good. And I'm just going to go back to my camera here. Now I want to create a camera animation. Now I'm going to go back to the front of my time. So I'm going to go back to my timeline, the start timeline at frame 0. I want to quickly create another camera. I'm going to click on this checkbox and basically all I want to do is just create some really nice camera move. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to try and zoom in on this sphere. Alright, so I'm going to select a keyframe. I'm going to create a keyframe from frame 0 and I'm going to go to about say frame 50. I'm just going to hold down Alt and try and put my mouse in my point of interest so that when I left click and hold on that point of interest, my Cinema 4D viewport will kind of rotate or orbit around that particular point of interest. Right, so that's, I'm going to click my keyframe and we have that really nice animation going on here. So basically we are going to be using this stage to switch cameras just like we did earlier in the lesson. So right about here we have a nice animation. I want to create another camera. Tick on this to activate it and I'm just going to maybe capture this particular sphere from this side and I'm going to click on the keyframe, go the way to frame 90. I'm going to just move there a bit. Alright, so we have this animation going as well, and the next thing will be to come back to this final camera right here. So from around here, I'm going to create a keyframe. Now this keyframe we created basically will be the last keyframe in this entire sequence, right? Because at the end of this entire animation we want the camera to be sitting this way, to be framed this way, right? So since we know that I've created a keyframe for that particular framed position, and I just want to move that keyframe to about say 180, or let's try 150 for now. And right here on the 70, I'm just going to zoom in a bit right here. So okay, currently I'm unable to zoom because we have our protection tag on, so I just want to delete that, and so I can begin to move my camera. So I'm going to click on keyframe right, so the camera moves this way, right? I think I want to maybe move it back a bit, so we have the camera still moving while the text is formed. So now there's one more thing I want to do, and that will be to apply the stage and then do the camera switch. Now to do that, I'm going to go to my option here that says floor. I'm going to long press that, and I'm going to click on my stage. So currently the stage allows you to switch camera. Now from the very beginning, we want to affect our first camera, which is this camera dot one right here. So I'm just going to drag this, I'm going to drop it in the camera tab in the stage option there. So we have this animation going, and just about this animation comes to an end, say around 46. I want to create a keyframe here, and then just use my middle mouse button to just scroll up a bit, and I want to drop in the second camera. So I'm just going to drop this right here, and then I create a keyframe. So now it switches between those two cameras, and just before this animation ends also, it's around 84. I'm going to create a keyframe right here, and I'm going to just move up a bit, and that is, I'm moving up in the time slider right here, and I'm just going to drag in the final camera, and I'm going to create actually I dropped in the wrong camera. So I'm just going to drag the final camera here and check that. So if I go back here and just hit my play button, this is what we get. Nice. Alright, so I noticed the animation from the very beginning is a bit fast, so I want to go to my first camera, and I just want to, push this out here some more. So let's play and see how that's looking. Alright, so the switch happened too fast. I want to go to my stage. From this first switch right here, I'm going to draw a selection by left clicking and highlighting, and I'm just going to move my cursor directly on top of this keyframe where it is highlighted orange. I want to move it forward a bit, and I want to select the second switch keyframe and just move that forward a bit also. Right, so I'm just going to go back and move this forward a bit, and so we can enjoy that animation a bit before the camera switch. Right, so right now if you notice, this camera is already coming to a stop there. We don't want that, so I want to go back to the camera and just want to drag it a bit more. Yeah, I think that works, and let's go back and play. There we go, nicely done. And then we switch to this second camera, so I'm just going to highlight both of them and move a bit. I'm going to space this out some more. So now we have the second camera coming in, and we have the final camera. So I'm going to go to my stage, move this a bit back. This is the second camera switch, and yep, looking really good. Alright, so that's that. We've been able to create that title sequence, and the next thing is I'm going to introduce Octane to you fully in our next lesson. So we're going to bring back this scene and render this scene out using Octane render. Alright guys, so I'll see you in the next lesson.